The disaster movie genre is one filled with cliches and tropes that you see get reused all the time. You always see famous landmarks getting destroyed, the higher-ups or governments are always evil, the weird conspiracy guy is always right, and the pets are always going to survive. However, one of the weirdest tropes I see pop up time and time again in these films is how one of the main characters is always divorced or going through a divorce. And there's actually a reason this exact character arc is recycled so much in this genre. In a movie about a man saving the world from some sort of disaster, it makes sense to parallel that with an emotional arc about him saving his own world from a personal disaster. Just like how he puts the world back together, he will put his family back together. In fact, this character arc is used so often that I've compiled a list of 12 different disaster movies which fall into this trope. And in this video, I am going to rank every single one on how good their divorced dads are. I will be giving every single movie 2 different scores. An overall score on how good I think the movie is, and then a special score on the divorce meter, which analyzes how well the divorced dad trope is utilized. There are many different factors that go into this divorce meter score. First, does it feel tacked on and cheap, or is the character arc natural in the story and deserved? Is the relationship between these characters fleshed out, or is it just an afterthought? Now, sometimes this character arc can be applied to the ex-wife and the protagonist, but it can also be applied to the dad and their kid, because another big aspect of this trope is the protagonist's reconnection with their estranged child. Just for reference, both of these will be going off the Letterboxd scaling system of 5 out of 5 stars. Go check out my Letterboxd in the description, along with a list of all these movies ranked. We'll be starting at the bottom of the list with the movie with the worst divorced dad, and then work our way up to the movie with the best divorced dad. That being said, I may have a really good movie towards the bottom because it has a bad divorced protagonist, or I might have a really bad movie towards the top because it has a good divorced protagonist. Also, I'm very sorry if I trash a movie that you like. It's nothing personal, just business. And we'll start the ranking off in the 1.5 star tier, since luckily there aren't any movies that I put in the half star or the 1 star tier. Kicking off the list, we have the worst divorced dad trope with Geostorm. Geostorm is the 2017 movie set in the near future, where after a network of satellites designed to control the global climate starts to attack Earth, our heroes must race against the clock to uncover the real threat before a worldwide geostorm wipes out everything and everyone. Although this isn't a Roland Emmerich picture, it might as well be, since it was directed by Dean Devlin, who co-wrote many of Emmerich's films such as Independence Day. And just warning you, you will see a lot of Roland Emmerich in this list, as this is a character archetype he likes to reuse a lot. But Geostorm is just a bad time. Not only does it fail as a movie, but it also fails as a disaster movie. There's not nearly enough destruction, all the characters range from dumb to boring, and the plot is all over the place. I have an entire video where I break this movie down if you want to hear more of my thoughts, because it just sucks so much. The divorced dad in this movie is our hero, Gerard Butler's Jake Lawson. This is one of the worst uses of this trope because it hardly factors into the story or character arc of our protagonist at all. His ex-wife doesn't have a single line of dialogue, and we only see his daughter at the beginning of the movie and the very end. Now, this movie went through some huge reshoots, and during these reshoots, the protagonist's ex-wife was recast. So I have a feeling the divorce originally had a bigger impact on the story, but was cut out during this reshoot process. This makes the most sense to me because it literally has no impact on anything, and it's just kind of thrown in for flavor. Pretty poor use of the trope. 1.5 stars and 1.5 on the divorce meter. First up in the 2-star tier, we have Volcano. Volcano is the 1997 movie about a volcano that erupts in downtown Los Angeles and the story of a city official and a seismologist who try to stop its inevitable flow through the city. Volcano is pretty middle of the road when it comes to disaster movies. The destruction is fun, the themes are ham-fisted and cheesy, and the characters are an afterthought. I will say I was pretty entertained while watching it, but it didn't leave a lasting impression. This movie was also juggling way too many characters for its runtime, so it ends up feeling overstuffed. The divorced dad in this movie is Tommy Lee Jones' Mike Rourke, who must save his daughter from the dangerous volcano that erupts in LA. The divorced dad in this movie is not so much focused on the marriage aspect and is more about the dad saving their kid, who they have a rocky relationship with. But his kid isn't really a fleshed out character and is more of a plot device that he needs to save. The ex-wife isn't even in the movie, and the divorce isn't that important to the story, so it's not very high. 3 stars and a 2 on the divorce meter. Up next, we have The Day After Tomorrow. The Day After Tomorrow is the 2004 film directed by Roland Emmerich that follows Jack Hall, a paleoclimatologist who must take a daring trek from Washington, D.C. to New York City to reach his son, trapped in the crosshairs of a sudden international storm which plunges the planet into a new ice age. I don't have very strong feelings about The Day After Tomorrow. It's just a pretty average run-of-the-mill disaster movie. I couldn't connect to the lead characters all that much, as Jake Gyllenhaal's character is really the only one I cared about. Dennis Quaid's performance didn't work for me, and the plot was pretty boring. It does have great visuals though, so I gotta give it that. Now, I really debated including this one on the list, since it's not explicitly stated whether or not our main character Jack is divorced from his wife or not. However, it does seem like they are estranged since they live in different houses, and this is such an iconic disaster movie that I decided to include it. This movie, like many others on the list, is about Jack reaching his son from both an emotional level and physical level after they have a falling out and are separated by the storm. And by the end of the movie, they reconnect with each other, and it's a nice moment. 3 stars and a 2 on the divorce meter. Now we have a film in the 2.5 star tier, Moonfall. Moonfall is the 2022 film by our good friend Roland Emmerich. It's about a mysterious force that knocks the moon from its orbit and sends it hurtling on a collision course towards Earth. Moonfall is a very bizarre movie. The concept is insane. The characters are walking cliches, most of the humor misses by a mile, and the dialogue is cheesy beyond belief. But luckily, it does have some pretty cool destruction scenes, even if a lot of them have really bad CGI. I also have a separate video on this movie where I tear it apart if you want to check that out. Roland Emmerich, being the genius he is, decided to turn this trope up a notch in this movie. Because not only do we have a divorced dad, we also have a divorced mom. Both Patrick Wilson and Halle Berry's characters are both divorced and have kids in this movie. And both of their arcs are extremely boring. The trope in this movie isn't so much about Patrick Wilson getting back with his ex-wife, and is more about him reconnecting with his estranged son. They try and give him some emotional scenes, but they all missed with me, and I ended up caring about nothing. Overall, the divorced dad in this movie is decent, just very surface level and lazy, like everything else in this movie. 1.5 stars and a 2.5 on the divorce meter. Kicking off the 3 stars here, we have Outbreak. Outbreak is the 1995 film about a team of army doctors struggling to find a cure for a deadly virus that was transported from Africa to North America, and is now spreading quickly throughout a small California town. This movie just did not do it for me. The stuff between Morgan Freeman and Donald Sutherland was the best part of the film, as I found our main cast of characters pretty dull. I'm not a fan of Dustin Hoffman in this flick, and a lot of his dialogue was super cheesy for how seriously this movie takes itself. It was just not my speed. The divorced dad in this movie is Dustin Hoffman's Sam Daniels. He is the father of 2 dogs and is recently separated from his wife Robbie, played by Renee Rousseau. The main reason I am ranking this one a bit lower on the divorce meter is because I didn't buy these actors' chemistry, and a lot of the dialogue surrounding their past was pretty weak. But the actual arc was well done enough, and I like how they made his ex-wife an actual character. They kind of reconcile by the end of the film, as Sam is able to find a cure to the virus to save her, but it isn't as satisfying as it could have been. It's not terrible, just kind of meh. 2.5 stars and a 3 on the divorce meter. Up next, we have Armageddon. Armageddon is the 1998 film directed by Michael Bay that follows a misfit team of deep core drillers who are recruited to save the planet after NASA discovers that an asteroid the size of Texas will impact Earth in less than a month. Armageddon is dumb as hell, but it is also fun as hell. It's the perfect guilty pleasure movie to throw on when you're 3 beers deep. It's goofy and doesn't make sense, but it has big explosions and easy, digestible comedy and characters. I'm not a fan of the phrase, shut your brain off and enjoy the movie, but this movie is a poster boy for that idea. The divorced dad in this movie is our main character, Bruce Willis's Harry S. Stamper. Harry's wife left him and his daughter Grace when she was really young, so Harry has raised her all his life by himself. However, in the beginning of this movie, she falls in love with the boy, and it's the classic story of the daughter wanting to grow up and the dad not being able to let her go. This is a pretty standard character dynamic and arc that we've seen in tons of other movies. Since it's not too focused on the divorce angle or the dad reconnecting with their estranged child, it's not too high on the divorce meter. It could be the dead wife trope and the arc would be exactly the same, like Hotel Transylvania, for example. 3 stars and a 3 on the divorce meter. First up in the 3.5 stars here, we have Independence Day. Independence Day is the 1996 film directed by Roland Emmerich. The logline is as follows. The aliens are coming and their goal is to invade and destroy Earth. Fighting superior technology, mankind's best weapon is the will to survive. It's kind of crazy to me how Roland Emmerich dropped this banger and thought to himself, I'll never make a good movie again. Independence Day is one of those iconic blockbusters that is just so much fun. The dialogue and characters are pretty cheesy, but they still work for the vibe the movie is going for. The action and spectacle is top-notch, and most of the humor lands. Contrary to all his other work, Emmerich is able to make you care about his characters in this movie, and you can feel the stakes. The divorced dad in this movie is Jeff Goldblum's character, David Levinson. While he's not a dad, he is still divorced, so I included him. The relationship he has with his wife feels pretty natural and authentic, and you can buy their history together. I wish there was a little more closure with this plotline, as I felt they didn't wrap it up as well as they could have. But they still get back together in the end, and it's a sweet moment. 4 stars and a 3.5 on the divorce meter. Up next is 2012. 2012 is the 2009 film once again directed by Roland Emmerich. It tells the story of a frustrated writer who struggles to keep his family together after a series of catastrophes threatens to annihilate mankind. In my opinion, half of 2012 is good and half of it I just couldn't care less about. Everything in the beginning with the build up to the disaster and the first couple of big earthquakes was pretty great as far as disaster movies go. The action is exciting and the CGI is pretty impressive. But once our characters get to the mountains, who the hell cares, man? The entire third act of this movie is extremely weak, and it loses sight of what made the first 2 hours fun. And that's another thing. This movie is just too damn long. In my opinion, this film is the apex of the Roland Emmerich divorced dad universe. It hits nearly every single aspect of the trope straight on the head, and it seems like Emmerich perfected his disaster movie lead character at this point. The dad is, of course, our main protagonist, John Cusack's Jackson Curtis. He starts off as the disheveled dad who is struggling financially, that is trying and failing to reconnect with his kids. But when the end of the world strikes, he steps up to the plate and saves the family, becoming near superhuman when he's behind the wheel. The new boyfriend starts off as a tool, but over the course of the movie, he redeems himself and he saves the family several times. But they still give him a brutal and painful death for some reason, and the ex-wife doesn't even shed a tear over him. It was kind of odd. But this, of course, opens the door for Jackson to reconnect with his wife, and they once again become a happy family by the end of the film. I felt we could have used more backstory for their relationship, as it's pretty vague, and the way they get back together doesn't feel all that natural. But it's still a solid use of the trope and worthy of this tier. 2 stars and a 3.5 on the divorce meter. Now we have the 4-star tier, and up first we have Greenland. Greenland is the 2020 film that follows a family's struggle for survival as a planet-killing comet is about to hit Earth. Greenland is certainly the best disaster movie starring Gerard Butler as a man in a rocky relationship with his wife. Although, the only other competition is Geostorm, so it's not too hard to be number 1. This is a completely fine movie. The family has a great dynamic, the acting is solid, and the destruction is good enough. It kind of loses steam going into the final act, and the plot is meandering, but it provides a decent watch if you're into this kind of flick. The divorced dad in this movie is, of course, Gerard Butler's John Garrity. However, divorce is not quite the right word, as they are still technically married, but they are separated after they went through a rough patch. And the emotional arc of this film follows them getting back together. Nothing like a world-ending threat to save your marriage. This is a pretty good execution of the trope, as the filmmakers make you feel for this couple and their struggles. It's nice to see them learn to love each other again. 3 stars and a 4 on the divorce meter. Up next, we have San Andreas. San Andreas is the 2015 film about a rescue chopper pilot who makes a dangerous journey with his ex-wife across the state in order to rescue his daughter, after a massive earthquake hits California. San Andreas honestly was not as bad as I thought it would be. I wasn't expecting much from a big disaster flick that stars The Rock, but this movie has some decent action and a few good moments of heart. But it still has many of the bad hallmarks of the genre and ends up being pretty forgettable. It does have one of my favorite actors of all time, Paul Giamatti, in it. However, I think he is severely underused, and his plotline fails to connect to the main narrative of the story. The divorced dad in this movie is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's Ray. He has a great relationship with his daughter and is pretty cordial with his wife. The couple is not yet divorced in this movie, but they are in the process of getting one. And by the end of the movie, they reconnect with each other and have a happy ending. The new boyfriend starts off as a nice guy, but his true colors come out when he abandons Ray's daughter during the earthquake. Then a couple of scenes later, he gets crushed by a shipping container, which was pretty awesome. This is one of the better entries into this trope, as the main protagonist's relationship is more than just surface level, and their falling out with each other feels real and has some emotional weight to it. You can buy it and it works well within the story. 2.5 stars and a 4 on the divorce meter. Now we have the only film in the 4.5 star tier with War of the Worlds. And no, not the new one. War of the Worlds is the 2005 film directed by Steven Spielberg that follows an ordinary man who has to protect his children against alien invaders. War of the Worlds will have the most intense, terrifying, horrific scene you've ever seen in your entire life, followed by another one of the most intense, terrifying, horrific scenes you've ever seen in your life. I know this movie gets flack for its weak third act, and rightfully so, but to me, it wasn't so bad it compromised the absolute perfection of those first two acts. Man, Spielberg just knows how to do it. This might be his most underrated film in my opinion. I love this movie. The divorced dad in this movie is Tom Cruise's character, Ray Ferrier. He has a fantastic arc in this movie where he goes from a grubby, deadbeat dad to a valiant hero. This is one of the best uses of this trope, as it doesn't tread the same ground every other movie does, and him being a divorced dad is integral to the story and not just there for flavor. What I liked about this film is that he doesn't get back together with his ex-wife in the end. His arc is just to become selfless and protect his kids. It was really great the movie focused on that instead of throwing a weird redemption love arc in the mix. 4.5 stars and a 4.5 on the divorce meter. Finally, in the 5-star tier, we have the best divorced protagonist in a disaster movie, with Twister. Twister is the 1996 film about two storm chasers on the brink of divorce who must work together to create an advanced weather alert system by putting themselves in the crosshairs of extremely violent tornadoes. I'll never understand why there's people out there who don't like Twister. It's a banger. It has a great score and soundtrack, fantastic special and visual effects, a great cast, and a mostly decent story. I will admit, it is a bit predictable and simplistic when it comes to the narrative and character arcs, but that doesn't mean it isn't tons of fun and entertaining as hell. Just like Independence Day, it's one of these classic blockbusters. The divorced couple in this movie is our two main leads, Bill Paxton's Bill and Helen Hunt's Joe. Although he isn't a dad and they aren't divorced yet, what I love about this quote-unquote divorced protagonist is that his ex-wife has equal amount of screen time and is equally as important to the plot. She is not pushed to the side or just an item for our hero to win. She is her own fully fleshed out character. And the dynamic these two share in this movie is fantastic. They have an interesting history together where you can see why they drifted away from each other and no one is the bad guy in the relationship. They are both just flawed individuals. Not to mention the chemistry between these two actors is electric. I'm not usually big into romance in movies, but I was rooting for them to get back together the entire time. I just felt bad for Bill's new girlfriend, who definitely gets the short end of the stick in this movie. Overall, I loved it, and I think it has the best use of the divorced dad trope in a disaster movie. It's a bit ironic that I'm calling this the divorced dad trope, but the couple in this movie are technically not divorced, and Bill is not a dad. 4 stars and a 5 on the divorce meter. Alright, so that's my list. I'm not sure if I really learned anything by making this video, other than I am usually not a fan of disaster movies. But this was a fun experience, and I got to talk about movies, which I always love doing. But what are your thoughts? Do you agree with my ranking? What did I get wrong? Which trope should I rank next? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. This has been Tom from Eisenart Productions, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week. And here's a clue for next week's video.
Chicken jockey!